The book review that I'm doing is God of the Oppressed, and it's by James H. Cone. It was one of the assigned readings that we had in this class. In terms of historical context, Cone was an American theologian active in the 60s and 70s, and later on too, and he was a big pusher in black theology and black liberation. And in context, that was a time when he was writing and when he was active where there were a lot of deadly riots with black people uprising in America and really trying to further their position and trying to gain equal footing. So it was a real time of unrest in terms of socially for black people in America when Cone was writing, and even before that, with all the separate but equal laws in the late 19th century, and all that stuff really kind of like led into even before Cone was writing and before he was born. So there's been this whole context of blacks fighting for equality in America up until even today. I'd say for the thesis, Cone's overall thesis in the book would be that environment has all to do with environment and your social environment, and maybe also from your history, has all to do with shaping your relationship with God. And God is different to different groups of people. And if I'm from my white perspective, my relationship with God will be different than a black person's relationship with God, or an Asian person, or even another white person who's from a different socioeconomic class. They'd have a different relationship with God because their environment is different to mine. And I would get different answers, or I'd get different thoughts coming from God due to my different environment and the way I was raised and that kind of thing. So God isn't the same for everyone, is kind of what he's arguing in general. And Cone's writing I found it pretty difficult to understand, but I think I'd say he uses a lot of difficult words, but I think his overall point is that blackness should be, the way he's arguing it is that blackness should be used as a way to kind of like get rid of the oppression that white people are being put on black people in America. And the way they do that is through black power. um, I think like a really strong point that he made was, I think it was in chapter 6. He was talking about how Jesus was black, and I think like that goes back again to how Jesus is different for different people. Why do we assume that Jesus is always white, or not, or a man even? Why do we assume that? Um, he could be, or the same thing goes for God. Like we assume God is a white male, I guess, but he could really be a black female. He could be anything. It just again goes to show how, like, I guess what Cohen's saying too is that whites have dominated the discourse over the last couple thousand years. I mean, couple thousand years or so, um, in terms of religion. So it's really been a white religion, and Cohen is trying to break away from that and say we also there's a black perspective on this, which is important and should not be overlooked. Um, and I definitely I agree with Cohen's thesis and how he's arguing, because I think that like I was saying, that like everyone has a different point of view, and I've always thought myself that just assume Jesus was white and God was white, and he was a white, like in my mind he was a white male, and that's the reason I assume that is because I have a white experience, I guess. And I think if you were to ask a black person like what color of skin is Jesus, a lot of people, maybe they might say he's black, or he's a different, he's or female, or whatever. Like it's not, I can see it in myself, what Cohen is arguing, so it makes sense to me. Um, I also spoke to my dad too, and he said that he goes to a Christian church, and he moved around a lot, so he's been to a lot of different churches. And he said, I asked him, and he said, at almost all of his churches, it's all 100% white people, and that again kind of shows you that it's like um, the whiteness is the white and the blacks are the black in church, and there's not very much overlapping. And I think that that's again what Cohen is arguing, that religion means different things to different people. So it would be ideal to have a church, to have all the churches around where there's just a mixture of all different types of people, but that's not how it is. And I think like a lot of Cohen's work is like kind of backing that up, like what my dad was saying, just in real life. And I wish it wasn't that way, but I guess that's how it is right now. Um, the only thing I would say, what I think is wrong with what Cohen is saying is that it comes off a little aggressive to me, and it comes off a little not aggressive, but it comes off. It could be used, I think, as a way for the Black liberation for Black people to um, become aggressive and in their narrative and push it too hard and too in the face of of the white people in America. And I think that like it's such a difficult topic. But I think that if that the way that comes writing that definitely could happen from people reading that and taking it the wrong way. So I think like it's you got to be careful because I think God's overall message is love for everyone, and that message is the same for white people, the same for Black people, I guess. And I think you have to be careful about not being a hypocrite and still saying I love white people, I love Black people, I love everyone, and like it's just a fine line, I guess, between pushing Black equality and also but while also being civil and being um, loving towards everyone and inclusive towards everyone. So that would be like one thing I would say that in terms of what's wrong, I guess, with the way he's pushing his ideas.